Gentlemen, you're muted. Keith, Riaz.
You think I'd learned that by now?
Yeah, that's okay. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
Good. You want to? We want to wait another second till other folks get on? Or are you ready to?
Well, I think we got to start at 4 o'clock just to make sure we're kosher under the Open Public Meetings Act.
Should we identify everybody? I guess we'll go around the commissioner. I would ask if you're not a commissioner, please mute yourself. I guess we'll introduce ourselves. Michael Suleiman, Commissioner, Democrat.
Good, Thelma.
Oh, I'm Thelma Witherspoon. I'm Democrat.
And my name's Keith Davis, and I'm joined by Riaz Rajput, and we're the 2 Republican members of the Redistricting Commission. We should probably, for the record, just note that this meeting was advertised under the Open Public Meetings Act. An advertisement appeared in the Press of Atlantic City last Friday, January 21st, setting forth the Zoom meeting and indicating that the public had an opportunity to log on and participate.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to note for the record too, we are recording the Zoom hearing. I do know we're going to make that available to the 4 commissioners. Certainly, if anyone else wants a copy of the Zoom, I see no problem unless you all have in giving that to any other public entity. Just for the record. I know, do you want to identify, Keith? You have a court reporter on with us too?
I think there is a court reporter on. I think it's Karen Hayworth, who's on mute, and she is simply just taking down this proceeding. Karen, are you okay? Do you need anything from us before we really get started?
Just let me get the names for a second. Hi, Randy, how are you?
I'm good, Karen. How are you?
Good.
I would just ask, other than the commissioners, maybe we'll save public comment till the end. I just think that the 4 commissioners should be the one speaking unless called upon. Should I ask? I don't have a flag, or maybe I can get one. I actually would do a flag salute.
Send it to me. Hold on, I have one.
Okay.
I have an assistant here helping me. You want to come over here and hold this? Stand on the screen.
It's Karen. One second. After
you
we
go.
start, I would just appreciate if everyone would just speak one at a time and not cross over each other, because on Zoom, as you're probably familiar, it cuts the first person off.
Understood.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Attention, salute. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one
nation,
under
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good job.
Okay, well, thank you, Chairman, for leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I did ask before the meeting if we could all maybe take a moment to have introductory comments. I will confess my comments are a little lengthy, so I don't know if you or Mr. Rajput would want to say a few words before we got started.
Well, since it seems like you have something fully prepared, why don't you go ahead?
Okay. Let me just pull up my stuff here. Okay, so I want to thank everybody who's on the Zoom here. And let me first say that certainly Chairman Davis and Mr. Rajput, Thelma and I really look forward to serving with you. Obviously, we may not agree at times, but our relations, interactions are going to be respectful and polite, because we certainly have a very important responsibility to carry out on behalf of the citizens of Atlantic County. Just somebody was admitted to the chat there. I want to take a few minutes to talk to the public and to the media and anybody else who's on, kind of about, why we're here and how we feel, at least Dr. Witherspoon and I feel that how this process is going to work. So as everyone knows, every 10 years, the Constitution of the United States requires that a census be conducted. And certainly after that census is completed, redistricting begins in New Jersey, which establishes election maps for the next 10 years. I know some of you may already know this, but there may be members of the public who do not. So please bear with me. The congressional redistricting process, as we know, finished this past December. We are currently in the midst of state legislative redistricting, which is going on right now and will be completed sometime in March. And subsequently, this county commissioner redistricting process should be expected to be completed sometime in March. All of those redistricting commissions do have or will have an independent, impartial member appointed by the Chief Justice of the New Jersey Supreme Court, which I'll talk about a little later. Atlantic County, for those that don't know, is only one of 3 counties that has county commissioner districts. Most counties elect all of their members at large, but Atlantic County, Essex County, and Hudson County have district representatives. Here in Atlantic County, as some of us may know, we have a 9-member board of commissioners, 4 at large, and 5 districts. I know that varies by county with the other 2 counties, but that is how our county government is set up here in Atlantic County. The statute that guides the county commissioner redistricting process, and forgive me for practicing law without a degree, is NJSA 40:41A-118. Under this statute, the county chairpersons of the 2 political parties will appoint 2 commissioners to serve on this redistricting committee. Obviously, I appointed myself and Dr. Witherspoon. Chairman Davis appointed himself and Mr. Rajput. We're required to meet, obviously, it's our first meeting, and ultimately ask the Chief Justice to appoint an independent, impartial 5th member, commonly referred to as a tiebreaker, because he or she could ultimately be the deciding vote for either a Democratic drawn map or a Republican drawn map. Typically, as common practice, this is either a retired judge or an academic. But I really want to stress to the public that this, I want to use the phrase 5th member instead of tiebreaker, because this independent, impartial person does more than just break a tie. He or she or they are going to be with us for this entire journey in terms of analyzing the census data, declaring the parameters by which maps we judge, and I'll talk about that in a second, helping to set a schedule for meetings, privately offering input to each side on draft maps, and then ultimately accepting the submission of final maps, which will then be subject of briefs, memos, public hearings that the public may analyze these maps, comment on these maps before ultimately one is adopted. I do want to bring to everyone's attention, and after my remarks, I will put this in the chat, a good document here. This is prepared by the independent member of the state Legislative Redistricting Commission, Philip Karchman. Philip Karchman is a retired state appellate judge who was appointed by Chief Justice Rabner to serve as the 11th member on the State Legislative Redistricting Committee. Really put together a tremendous memo here. Its formal title is Statement of Standards of the 11th Member of the New Jersey Legislative Apportionment Commission. I will, kind of colloquially call it the Karchman Standard, dated January 7th, by the way. Mr. Karchman outlined the standards, both constitutional standards as well as universally accepted redistricting standards that he is going to use in analyzing state legislative maps and ultimately voting on a Democratic map or a Republican map. It's really a great read. I'd encourage, regardless of your political affiliation, to read it. And he really does a great job outlining his 9 standards, and the 9 standards: equal population, municipal boundaries, contiguity, compactness, the Voting Rights Act, communities of interest, competitiveness, continuity of representation, and partisan fairness. Again, please, I will put this in the chat and certainly make it available to members of the public. It is online. It's a public document, but it really is a great guide for all of us involved in this. Candidly, Dr. Witherspoon and I are going to use this as our road guide in terms of throughout this process, ultimately formulating a map. I would certainly encourage our Republican friends to utilize this as well. And certainly, I know that was a little long-winded. I will certainly allow Ms. Witherspoon and Mr. Rajput, Mr. Davis, to offer introductory remarks, but just to formalize it, I do want to put on the record that I do make a motion that we do declare an impasse today, and that this commission in the coming days submit a letter to the Chief Justice asking him to appoint an independent, impartial 5th member to our commission pursuant to NJSA 40:41A-118. So we may begin this process after today's hearing. Again, I will allow everyone to have introductory remarks, but can I get a second on that motion, please?
I would second the motion.
Ms. Witherspoon, Mr. Davis, Mr. Rajput, any opening comments?
I have comments, but we can vote on your motion first, and I think it'll be denied and we'll be deadlocked, and then we can revisit that motion after we do so, unless you'd like to withdraw it now.
Well, I'm allowing you the opportunity to offer any comments you may wish to offer. I'm happy. Well, if I may, Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt. That is my intention to put that motion down. If you would prefer, I'm happy to withdraw it to allow you and Mr. Rajput to offer any comments. Is that
let's get one thing straight with respect to this proceeding. We can appoint yourself and myself as co-chairs, but there's no chair of this committee. So until there's a 5th member that's appointed by the Chief Justice, we have to play nice and get along, which I trust we will, in order to have a meaningful dialogue with the hope that we can come together and establish a map that meets the legal requirements that are set forth by statute. And I'm hopeful that we can do so. I think it is very premature to declare an impasse with respect to our proceedings until we have the opportunity to talk about what our positions are. We haven't done that. This is our very first meeting. I don't know what your plans are with respect to how we address the population changes that have occurred over the last 10 years, and you don't know what our position is. And I think before we go down that step of having to prolong this process and trouble the Chief Justice to appoint a fifth member, it would behoove us to put our cards on the table so that we know where each party stands with respect to the map. I'm going to share my screen. If somebody could give me permission, Mr. Burrows. So 10 years ago, we went through this process, Mr. Suleiman. You weren't there, I was. Very similar, you set out what the statute requires, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats. If we don't agree, an impasse is declared, and we do go to the Chief Justice for the appointment of a fifth member. And unfortunately, that did occur 10 years ago. And the Chief Justice appointed a very respected member of the judiciary, Dennis Brathwaite. God rest his soul, has since passed away, but approached the job with diligence, respect. He learned and listened to all of the testimony that was provided throughout the course of the proceeding and set forth a decision. And my host, I'm still disabled from sharing my screen. I'd like to have the ability to do so, Mr. Burrows, and we can figure that out. Who is Mr. Burrows?
Mike, you're the host.
Okay, let me see if I can make Keith a co-host and perhaps,
Well, since we're co-chairs, make me the co-host, Mike.
well, I don't, okay. And I would note while you're loading your screen, I don't know if you heard my comments earlier. I did say we're going to keep this respectful and cordial and work together. And
So far, so good.
I don't know about that, but it's my intention to keep it respectful, Keith.
Good. And you know what I'll say is that we ought to act in a bipartisan manner here. And Mike, you and I have had the ability to do that. We came together recently to support a shared municipal court consolidation system because I think we both thought it was the right thing to do. And it's been implemented, it's up and running. And I'm still hopeful that we can act in a bipartisan manner here to try to develop a map that meets all the statutory criteria. So here's the current map. This is what it looks like right now. And Judge Brathwaite 10 years ago issued a written opinion. It's a public record, but if anybody wants a copy, you can email me and I'm happy to provide a copy to you. But it sets forth the requirements of NJSA 4041A-120, preserving municipal boundaries to the extent possible, maintaining communities of interest, respecting voting district boundaries, avoiding any bias in favor of one political party over another, ensuring competitive seats, and minimizing voter disruption. And this is Judge Brathwaite's quote: "I am satisfied that Plan 2011-2, which is the plan that's before you, complies more fully with the statutory scheme and traditional redistricting principles. It is much more equal in population. D1, which is currently Commissioner Coursey's district, which is right here, which is Pleasantville, portions of Egg Harbor Township, and Atlantic City."
Chairman, can I just say, I don't mean to interrupt, but.
Well, Michael, you did interrupt me, and you know what? I didn't interrupt you.
Chairman
interrupt you
Brathwaite
once.
is not the fifth member here. God rest his soul. So I just want to make clear, he's not our fifth member.
No, but it's part of the record of the case. And his
Okay.
opinion, I respect. He was a registered Democrat, and he was an appellate division judge, retired at the time. And I want to make sure his comments at the time were clear. He said D1 has a greater population diversity. Further, he's convinced that Plan 2011-2 is more compact. He also said that Plan 2011-2 results in much less voter disruption, which is important. Here's what we know about the population changes. Generally speaking, we know that District 3, which is portions of Hamilton Township and Egg Harbor Township, is overpopulated. It has grown. We also know that District 2, which are the portions of Egg Harbor Township, the 3 mainland communities, and the 3 down beach communities, are also is underpopulated, and as a result needs to gain in population to meet the statutory requirements. So those are the districts that require changes and no others. The other ones all meet the population requirements, D1, D4, and D5. I think we can keep our discussion really limited to those two districts to maintain what Judge Brathwaite set forth 10 years ago, and not cause tremendous voter disruption and confusion by scrambling up a map that meets all of the statutory criteria. Not my word for it. A retired appellate division judge set forth this 10 years ago, and it really doesn't have to change all that much. The core of this map, and I think it's a principle that we have to adhere to, I think it's probably legally required under the Voting Rights Act, is District 1, which includes Pleasantville, Egg Harbor Township, and Atlantic City. That is a minority-majority district, meaning it is a district, the majority of voters of which are members of minority constituent groups. And in fact, it is currently represented by an African-American member of the Board of Commissioners, Mr. Corsi, as he has for many years now. That's a district that I think legally has to be preserved. Otherwise, we'll be creating an unlawful map that will be subject to legal scrutiny and likely being struck down at some future date. And I think, again, it's required by the Voting Rights Act. If we start from that principle and we can agree that that district must legally be maintained in order to ensure representation in a district, the majority of voters of which are from minority groups, I think we can work out a map that is bipartisan nature and not declare an impasse and not necessitate going to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in order to have a fifth member vote. Depending upon where we disagree or agree on that, if you don't agree with me, Mr. Suleiman and Dr. Witherspoon, with Mr. Rajput and me, then we'll have to go down that fifth member road. We'll have to, I think, have a deadline in order to write to the Chief Justice and suggest certain fifth members. Chief Justice could pay attention to those. Chief Justice could appoint his fifth member off our list, which is what he did 10 years ago with the appointment of Judge Brathwaite. I also think we need to establish what type of a budget we're going to receive from Atlantic County government to do our work. Will the fifth member be entitled to a salary? I have a court reporter present here. I told Chairman Suleiman that I was going to invite that court reporter to take down a proceeding because this is a legal proceeding in many ways. It may be subject to court challenge in the future, and it's very important that we do have a clear record of that for a court to review at some future date. Is that a cost that the county is willing to absorb with respect to this process? But before we get to that, I would just ask the question to my counterparts, members of the Democratic Party, can we at least agree that Commissioner Corsi's district, District 1, must remain essentially in its current form as a compact majority-minority district?
Are you finished, Keith? I don't want to interrupt you again.
I'm finished. Riaz, do you have anything to add to that? I don't want to take it for granted that you do.
No, I'll simply, I have no further comments because it's very technical, and Chairman Davis has explained and stated very correctly, and I support his views and thoughts. And further, I thank him and for nominating me for this. I consider this as a very, very important part of our effort. And I asked, I extend to the Chairman Suleiman also that regardless of our views, and we should agree to at least basic principle that we have to serve the people of this county, and whatever we make and our effort should be in the best interest of our people. That's all I have to say, and I am all for it.
Thanks, Riaz.
Thank
Dr.
you so very
Witherspoon, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't have anything to add at this point.
Before I weigh in, Keith, do you mind unsharing your screen? I mean, we're welcome to leave it up, but I don't know if you need to, just so people can see the boxes.
Okay.
Thank you. Let me, and I appreciate, and I, I will refer back to my earlier statement, which was, while we may not agree at times, our relations interaction will be respectful and polite. It seems like we're starting from 0 to 100 already, which is unfortunate. The purposes of my comments, Chairman, was, to set the stand. First of all, a lot of people, we do redistricting once every 10 years. So I think it's important to set the stage of why are we here? What are we doing? How is this process going to look? What's the relevant statute? What's the relevant provisions, the Cartridge standards, et cetera? That's the intent of it. The purpose of that is to start off and say, here's why we're here. If we look at congressional redistricting, we look at legislative redistricting, we look at redistricting all across the country. There are things in place to allow for unbiased, independent folks to be part of the redistricting process, whether that be a nonpartisan, a non-political person, what have you. The congressional and legislative folks in their first meetings each declared an impasse, asked for a fifth member or an independent member to allow a fresh set of eyes who is not biased. Obviously, you and Mr. Rajput are biased for Republicans. Me and Thelma are biased towards Democrats, and we respect that. And we thrive on having two vibrant political parties in Atlantic County. They declared impasse immediately because they wanted folks to start from the very beginning, to carry them through the entire process and establish what it is that we want to accomplish, which is ultimately passing a map. We have had no public input. We've had no input from who a tiebreaker could be. We don't know what their standards of the tiebreaker could be. You point to things 10 years ago, which are completely irrelevant, one way or the other. Judge Brathwaite is not our fifth member, and I don't mean to disrespect his legacy, but he is not our fifth member. We have no maps. We have not, we haven't heard, nobody's formulated a map. We haven't heard from a tiebreaker in terms of what their standards are. I respect that Judge Brathwaite had his standards. There may be different standards. The new tiebreaker may use the Cartridge standards. They may use other standards. We look at Wallace used some of his own standards. So it is premature and way too early to have guns blazing and say, let's just make this an argumentative process. Let's start off. Let's declare the impasse, get a fifth tiebreaker in terms of your logistical questions, in terms of whether they're going to get paid, who that is, submitting prospective names. We want to work collaboratively with you. I have an idea on tiebreakers, which I would like to present to the commission. I hope you'll consider. This sort of stuff we could work together on. And if after we get this tiebreaker, if we end up agreeing on a map, great, then it'll be a 5-0. If we end up not agreeing on the map, then the tiebreaker would, or again, the fifth member would break the tie. Again, this person walks us through the entire process. We get the fifth member today. We're going to sit down with them. What are your standards? What are our standards? If they say it's the same standards as Brathwaite, then God bless. If it's the standards as Karchman, God bless. But I don't know why we're reinventing the wheel here when it's good for Leroy Jones and Doug Steinhardt, when it's good for John Bramnick and Craig Coughlin. Why are we doing something different down here when this has been done for decades at the state level and the congressional level, even the county level? I don't see any problem with asking the Chief Justice, and we could expedite it, to send us a fifth member so that we may work together on doing all of these things that you suggested.
Well, you know my position, and I like to think that our parties operate a little differently in Atlantic County than they do in Trenton, that we're more collaborative, and that the four of us should be able to sit down and have a reasonable discussion. And I would ask the question again, I haven't gotten an answer to it yet. Can we start with the principle that we need to preserve District 1 as a minority-majority district? If we can, I think the changes here are very minor, very slight, amount to tweaking, and don't necessitate a fifth member. So I would just ask you, can we start with that principle?
Chairman, respectfully, it is inappropriate to have any discussion on limiting redistricting to any one district or any one scenario or anything. This is the first inning. We are in the first inning of a 9-inning game, and it's inappropriate for any of us to talk about any scenarios until we have a fifth member. We talk about with that fifth member, get a timeline, see what that fifth member wants. We can go down the rabbit hole and we have one thing, and then a tiebreaker says, well, I don't like these standards, I'm doing something else. I agree with what you're saying in terms of working collaboratively. All I'm saying is, why aren't we going to have a non-biased, non-political person join us on that collaboration? That's it. I think I know the dig about Trenton, but I think the residents of Atlantic County would appreciate a registered unaffiliated, either a retired judge or a brilliant academic joining us who doesn't give a hoot about Republican or Democrat in Atlantic County, who wants to analyze objectively map or maps. I don't know what you're saying and I'm saying is in conflict. All we're saying is work collaboratively, but have a fifth non-biased person at the table. This is a countywide process, and it's not a one district, two. This is, again, if you would like, we can put our motion up. If it fails, and so be it. If you want to put up a motion to do a map, I suspect that's going to fail too. So I don't know why we're belaboring what should be a first collaborative meeting and making this a political dogfight.
Well, because I'm trying to actually be collaborative, and I still haven't gotten an answer to my question, which is, can we agree that legally, under the Voting Rights Act, that District 1 has to be preserved with respect to any map that we approve of through this process? You've elected to not answer the question several times. I just believe that if we can agree on that, then the other adjustments are quite easy and simple, and they don't require a wholesale redrawing of lines that would only cause voter disruption and confusion. So I'll ask it one last time, and then if I don't get the answer, then we do have an impasse, okay? Because if we can't agree on that issue, then I agree we're not going to be able to agree on a map ultimately. So
when your colleague, the Republican Party chair, did they start off congressional legislative redistricting asking, what are you going to do about District 16? What are you going to do about District 2? What are you going to do District 8? Did they say one way or the other, or did they agree to an impasse to get an independent member?
Look, I think it's important to not overinflate this process. These are not 12 congressional districts. These are not 40 state legislative districts. This is Atlantic County. There are 5 existing compact districts. There hasn't been a lot of wholesale population changes. Only 2 of the 5 existing districts have had significant population changes warranting redistricting. That's it. So I think the comparison to Congress and state legislature is really inappropriate, but I'll ask the question one last time. If I don't get an answer, I'm happy to have your vote be taken. And unfortunately, we'll have to have a 5th member get involved and avoid the ability to work on a bipartisan basis to come up with a map that's fair for all voters of Atlantic County, which I think is a shame.
I would say, Chairman, I think you're discounting the great people of Atlantic County. Yes, it's not a legislative or congressional redistricting, but this process could affect all 270,000 of us living in Atlantic County. So don't sell us too short, my friend. This is a very important process, and we should treat it like congressional legislative, because it's a big deal, to quote President Biden. Look, you could ask me, what are you going to do about District 1? What are you going to do about District 5? What are you going to do about District 3? It's irrelevant, and it's inappropriate, and it's premature. You keep going about equal population. There are 8 other standards for redistricting. Again, municipal boundaries, contiguity, compactness, the Voting Rights Act, communities of interest, competitiveness, continuity, representation, partisan fairness. I have no idea what a independent member believes in those. Will they weigh one versus the other? I have no idea. I don't know. We don't know. Again, I guess we have a fundamental disagreement here. Why we can't work collaboratively with an unbiased, impartial person who has no D or R next to their name? Why do you not want to have, if it's good enough for Doug Steiner and Tom Kane and John Bramnick, I don't know why it's not good enough for us here. Why not have an unbiased voice in the room? Hey, this unbiased voice in the room could say, Keith, you're exactly right. You're right on, end of story. But why not invite an independent 5th member to join us? I don't see why this is controversial at all. This should be, frankly, a 20-minute meeting we're having today.
Okay, I think we've stated our positions. I'm not going to waste everybody's time. And believe me, I know this is an important process, and my comment should not be construed as indicating that it's not an important process. I was only making the point that population changes you see statewide are much different than the very, very, very minor population changes you're seeing in Atlantic County over the course of the last 10 years. There's many members of the public here. This is a public meeting. I think before we take any vote, it's our responsibility to open this meeting up to the public, allow the public to comment, and then we can take a vote on your motion. So I make a motion to open up the meeting for public comment.
If I may ask for, and I will identify Mr. Well, first of all, I have a motion on the floor to do a fifth member, but
You
I would
delayed it.
ask, I delayed it out of respect for you, Chairman, as a way, again, I thought this would be a very jovial meeting, Keith. This has been
It
very
is.
contentious,
I'm
which
smiling.
is unfortunate.
It
All
is.
right, well, they're gritted teeth. I want to recognize, just for the record, Scott Salmon, who is the attorney for myself and Dr. Witherspoon. Is it, certainly it was our intention to have public comment at the end to be compliant with the Open Public Meetings Act. Is it necessary to have public comment during this time? I think we all know it's, we need to have civility of these meetings and have the free-for-all here of commenting and all this. Do we need to have a public comment? I'd like to get at least from me and Thelma's side, an opinion from our attorney.
Sure, yeah, it would be our position that a specific comment is not needed before, is not required before the vote, although we should have one for the meeting as a whole and come afterwards. But if the committee wishes, we can have one before the vote.
Yeah, and my counsel here is as well. Thank you, Mr. Salmon. It's nice to meet you. My counsel is here as well, Mr. Randall Flaherty, who's on the meeting. Listen, I don't think there's a legal requirement to do it now as opposed to the end of the meeting. I just think in the spirit of maintaining joviality and as a matter of fairness, we ought to have it before we take a vote on this. So in case anybody from the public has an opinion on it, we can hear it, and we can factor that testimony in as part of our decision-making process. I think we owe it to the public.
Well, you just said you were going to vote for it. I mean, I would just say, I would ask the public then, can we agree that comments would be germane just to the motion in question? I would ask we not go down the rabbit hole and do that at the end of the meeting. And certainly the public can comment on anything they want at the end. Are you amenable to that, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, we can keep it limited to this motion as to whether we need a fifth member appointed and then reopen it afterwards again, if you'd like to.
Okay.
I think it's going to overlap, but if that's your preference, I'm not going to split hairs.
If I may, I just want to restate my motion. The motion would be that pursuant to NJSA 40:41A-118, we declare an impasse and in the coming days submit a letter to the Chief Justice asking him to appoint an independent, impartial fifth member to the commission. I will note, Chairman, for the record, I do have an idea I want to broach you in the spirit of cooperation in terms of how the two sides can submit prospective tiebreak or just prospective fifth members, but I don't think that would be appropriate for this motion. I'm not trying to be coy. I just you may ask how that's going to happen, and I at least want to get the impasse voted on, and then hopefully we can agree to something collaboratively. So with
Great.
that, I don't know if somebody I don't know if Mr. Burrows is still, he may have tried. I don't know if anybody wants to with their hand up wants to unmute themselves.
I saw Olivia Caldwell raise
Okay.
her hand, I believe.
I did.
Can I just I'm sorry, Ms. Caldwell, I
ahead.
would just ask him, just forget this and just for all public hearings and at the end, may I suggest we limit public comment to 3 or 4 minutes each? No disrespect on Ms. Caldwell, just so we have structure.
Not
at
a
these
problem.
meetings.
I wasn't going to be long.
Well, no, just for Ms. Caldwell, I just want to ask Mr. Davis, Mr. Rajput, Ms. Witherspoon, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I think with some flexibility, we're not going to shut people down in the middle of a sentence, but if we can
Agreed,
all keep
absolutely.
our comments concise.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My first comment has to do with the motion that's on the floor. Given what I have heard from both chairmen, it does appear that there may be some validity in having a neutral person. That is my comment. And if I can say, this is my first meeting that I've attended with regard to redistricting. As a member of the public, I think the criteria, the numbers, all of the factors should be shared to everyone. I think that people that have been on these committees before know more than many of us in the public. And in order for the public to really know what's going on, there should be some consideration so that we can see charts, numbers, however you want to place it, so that we will know exactly what is going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you,
Caldwell.
I think that's a good point, and I think at some point we have to talk about budget, maybe having the county give us a little bit of web space to upload those documents so that the public can easily access them. I think we can work together on accommodating that request. It's a reasonable one.
And to Ms. Caldwell's point, the congressional legislative are very transparent. They have two great websites that have the members and data and yeah, absolutely. I think I see Mr. Diego. And I would just remind the public, if you're not speaking, to please keep your mic muted. But Mr. Diego, you want to unmute yourself and do your 3 minutes or 5 minutes, please?
Sure, thank you. I'm on the board of directors for the Spanish Community Center here in Atlantic County, and also president of the Hispanic Leadership Association of New Jersey. And was born and raised in Pleasantville, went to the public schools here in Pleasantville. My law office is here in Pleasantville. And what I will say, just as one voice in the Latino community, is that there should be a serious consideration of creating a District 2 that takes into consideration Pleasantville, because Pleasantville is majority Latino. It's not majority any other group, it's majority Latino. And our interests are not necessarily going to be represented by District 1. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So I respectfully agree that I think there should be a 5th member of this committee regarding redistricting, and with a serious consideration being made for having a District 2 that includes Pleasantville. It's not going to negatively impact District 1. District 1 will still be a majority minority community, minority district. But what it does do is give us at least the opportunity to have the Latino voices heard in Atlantic County. And that's pretty much all I have to say in a nutshell. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other
Anyone else
public?
from the public?
Any other names?
Mr. Pogue?
Thank you both. Creed Pogue, 169 Cumberland Avenue, Estill Manor. On the issue that I think was Ms. Caldwell mentioned, if it would be possible, whether on a separate website allied with aclink.org or on the county planning website. I believe that the Remington and Vernick, the engineers that the Board of Elections had used for the municipal rewarding, have the maps, they have the census numbers that can be made available. So therefore, if through this process, public groups want to submit various ideas, they would have the tools to do so. And obviously a tiebreaker may wind up suggesting gently or not to the folks involved to give good consideration to one of those maps. I think it would also be important, with a tiebreaker to get a current understanding of the state of litigation under the Voting Rights Act as far as what is required at this point, because while we have a very diverse county, and as Mr. Diego was talking about, our friends in Pleasantville, those demographics have definitely changed over time. But there's no one racial group, that has 20% of the county population, and where the opportunity to elect representatives would come in. And so if we're able to create more districts with more opportunities, then that may be very healthy. And again, I think that's where a tiebreaker would wind up coming in to help with that. and to take a look at all the other criteria that are involved. And certainly Judge Karchman seemed to lay out a number of things and see if we're able to create, if the commissioners would be able to create a map that's a tighter population, it divides fewer municipalities. All of those would, I think, be strong goals. So I would therefore suggest that, after all, when you talk to the academics on redistricting, I'll finish with this, they all strongly recommend to bring the tiebreaker in at the beginning. And I'm sure resources, not speaking for county commissioners on this call or Mr. Ferguson or anyone else, but I'm sure that nominal resources can be made available to help that to happen. But it was better to have the tiebreaker involved at the beginning rather than waiting. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just say, I would just ask Chairman Davis if we could have this bipartisan, any talks with the county. I don't mean to bust your chops, but I was told about the court reporter 5 minutes ago and said, oh, hopefully you'll cough up some dough for this, which I have no problem with. It just, I just hope we can be open and transparent with our communications to the county, please.
That's why I texted you.
Well, 5 minutes before the meeting after I texted you, but Keith is an old friend, folks. I'm allowed to bust his chops and he's always welcome to bust my chops.
Well, I don't take it that way. And I would just say, in response to Mr. Pogue's comments, the only thing I would add is, it was stated that Judge Brathwaite is no longer here as the fifth member. Judge Karchman's not a member of this commission either, this redistricting commission. So I think we should continue to hear from the public, but I think we should be guided by the statutory criteria that's laid forth in the law and what our understanding is of Atlantic County. We live here, we know it, we work and live here every day. I just think it's important that we rely upon our own judgments, not those that are being established by a state legislative redistricting commission.
I just want to note, and I don't want to do a ping pong, but what happened 10 years ago is completely irrelevant. This is a brand new commission with a brand new tiebreaker. I appreciate you have the institutional knowledge, Chairman. You have a lot of longevity as the county chairman. I think one of the longest serving in the state. So kudos to you. However, really 10 years ago, Judge Brathwaite, it has zero bearing on what we're doing here. This is a clean slate. And just because something was done or not done 10 years ago doesn't mean it's not going to be done or is done now. The reason why I bring up the Karchman memo is one, unless you're an expert on redistricting, which is respectfully, most people on this call are not, as a layperson, this is a pretty good read. And I think it gives you an idea, and maybe even Olivia, you could send this to your members in the NAACP and we'll send it to our committee members. And I would encourage Keith, you do it as well. I mean, Judge Karchman is unaffiliated. I think he actually was appointed by a Republican governor. And these are good, unbiased things. Again, we could have a fifth member who rips this up and says, forget about it. You may not abide by it. We may not either. But in terms of educating guys like me who have never done redistricting before, I thought this is a pretty damn good read. Any other members of the public?
From the public?
If not, can we take a?
Hold on, let's give it just one more second.
Okay. All right.
Anybody else for the public? Going once, going twice. Okay, motion to close. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, Mr. Chairman Suleiman, would you like to reintroduce your motion again?
Well, we approved the motion due to the impasse and to send a letter to Chief Justice. What I was referencing was in terms of the prospective fifth members. We looked at a good guide, I think, is congressional redistricting. So I believe, and perhaps Mr. Salmon or somebody else can correct me if I'm wrong, the Chief Justice directed the two parties to submit a list of prospective and potential tiebreakers to an independent third party who would get the names, not share them with the opposing party to see if a name matched. What I am, and I think that's good because if we happen to match on a name, Chairman, I think that would be great because then I think the work is done. We both agreed on a tiebreaker and that's it. Should we not agree on a name, this third party would then submit those lists of names to the Chief Justice without indicating whether those names were submitted by a Republican or Democrat, so that the Chief Justice is not bias towards whether I submitted and Thelma submitted a name or you and Mr. Rajput submitted a name. So, as of this moment, Thelma and I have 4 prospective tiebreakers that we would submit to this third party. I do know I spoke to a professor at Stockton, Professor Roger Jackson, who would be amenable to being that independent person that would take the names of our 2 tiebreakers, a list of the 2 lists of tiebreakers, and then either see if we match, if not, or send those names up to Stuart Ravner, the Chief Justice. Again, I'm not dying on the hill on Mr. Jackson. I just reached out to him because he's an academic. I know another academic over there is Brian Terrell, who you know pretty well, who's actually a dyed-in-the-wool Republican, and I would certainly trust him, for example, to be the arbiter of those names and not share them with either party. So I'm less concerned about who the independent person is to get the names, but I think it would be a nice way of, one, allowing both you and I and our respective colleagues to submit names, and secondly, not bias the Chief Justice on the names. Worst case, we can send names, you can send names, they just want to know where they came from. I like what they did in congressional, where the names are sent by this person without R or D next to them. And candidly, I hope we land on a name. I honest to God, we have 4 names. I suspect we could get more if we'd like. If we land on a name of a tiebreaker and a 5th member, I would be very happy.
I don't know that we need to get a person from Stockton University involved in this. I'm willing to come to you.
Yeah.
I'm willing to come to you with my list. I'll hand you mine in an envelope. You hand me yours. We'll open them up at the same time. If we play match game, and then we'll send them up. And if we don't, then we'll have the Chief Justice make a decision. But I think we should keep this as simple as possible. If you want me to meet you out at the, on the expressway somewhere, I'll meet you in the parking lot. If you want to, come to my office, you're welcome to do so. But if you could give us until, if we could establish a deadline of Tuesday next week, Riaz and I have several names in mind, but I want to vet them a little bit further over the weekend. And maybe we can schedule time on Tuesday to meet, and then we can send them up no later than next Thursday to the Chief Justice.
So I won't speak for Thelma. I'm certainly okay with that. My intention is not to pick someone just at Stockton. I mean, it could be anybody as the goal. I would just ask, if we're going to do that, Chairman, that when we submit the, I don't know if we want to even then identify who if they're a D submission or R submission. Maybe the goal is submitting the names in and of themselves. I don't know if you'd be amenable to that. I guess you'd have to see what our list is and what your list is. Maybe that won't be the case. Maybe we have to designate D or R.
Well, again, I can just tell you, having gone through this process 10 years ago, and listen, my memory may be a little hazy by now, but I have no recollection of doing anything other than having the Democrats on the commission submit their names, the Republicans on the commission submit their names, and guess what the Chief Justice did? He picked a name that wasn't on either side's list. And I suspect that's what's going to happen here. But I think that's the most straightforward way to deal with it. If we want to meet in order to see if we match up on one person, I'm fine with doing that.
Well, look, that's what we'll do. I will say again, I want to make clear, and no disrespect, Chairman, what happened 10 years ago is irrelevant. So I'm glad you have institutional. Again, this is a new commission, a new body, and I think we should be empowered to make our own decisions. Again, I like using congressional as legislative as a model because we're raising ourselves up. I feel that it is as important as it is. I'm getting the sense maybe that my friends on the other side of the aisle feel that this is a nothing burger and this is a pissant redistricting process.
No,
this is very important.
That.
So
you've got to stop saying that, because that is not the case. This is an important process. It's just not identical to what goes on in congressional and state legislative redistricting. That's my only point. This is a much more concise inquiry that I think we have to make, because the population changes here are extraordinarily minimal. And I think our focus should be limited to that. But that's for another day. I think for today, let's set those deadlines of Tuesday for you and I to meet, Thursday to submit a letter to the Chief Justice declaring an impasse, and I would propose a motion that we operate under those rules.
I am fine with that. I would just note then, after the Chief Justice notifies us as a of a tiebreaker that we then schedule a second, I guess it'll be our next meeting, public meeting, so that we can obviously have a chance to confer with the tiebreaker here, his or her views and timeline and all that sort of stuff. So are you suggesting then after Thursday, we send the letter, then we'll have a meeting when we hear back?
Yeah, so we'll have to wait for the Chief Justice to respond with whoever the fifth member is. Then we'll schedule another meeting. We'll provide public notice as we did for this meeting. It'll be open to the public can comment. Hopefully by that point, we'll have an opportunity to talk with the county about the resources they can bring to support our legislative responsibilities. We'll schedule the meeting, we'll provide notice. And the only thing I would ask is for that meeting, I think it would be helpful for us to be in the same room together, albeit socially distant, so that we can actually have a meaningful discussion. And perhaps the fifth member wants to break us up and talk to us exclusive of each other to see if we can build a bridge. I remain hopeful that we can, if we can keep our focus on what the Voting Rights Act requires and the minimal changes that I think are necessary here.
I guess, look, any talk about what we'll do at the next meeting will be with the tiebreaker. Certainly it's up to the fifth member, whether they want to do in-person, virtual. I would just say as a personal note, I think we should have a combination of both, just so if folks can't make it out or they're working or whatever, they can participate remotely. I would, I guess, respectfully disagree with my old friend, Chairman Davis. I thought we had a very spirited discussion today and we're over Zoom. So, Keith and I have been sparring partners for many a year, and I thought we had another sparring session today, but again, I do hope we keep things respectful and cordial and polite, and that's my commitment, and I hope it's yours as well.
It is. I just think we can be a little bit more civil when we're sitting next to each other as opposed to being on a screen.
No, I may want to strangle you, Keith. I don't know about that.
We'll put the fifth member in between us.
There you go.
All right, so I'll repeat that motion
Yeah.
to operate with the Tuesday deadline for Chairman Suleiman and I to meet to exchange names, and then the following Thursday to send those names up to the Chief Justice, declaring the impasse and asking the Chief Justice to appoint the fifth member. Is there a second?
I second.
All right. Roll call, yes. Mr.
Yes.
Rajput?
Yes.
Mr. Suleiman, yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Dr. Witherspoon?
Yes.
Very good.
Are you buying me lunch, Keith?
Well, at the rate we're going, it's going to be dinner, so that's why I'm going to cut it off.
Absolutely.
Any
do we
other
want-
business we need to discuss? I don't think there is, other than, I know Mr.
Keith,
Ferguson's here. Jim, do you have any updates from the county in terms of what resources may be brought to bear for our role?
Let me just say, I don't know specifically. I will certainly talk about that. I can tell you that the last time, and again, I know that was 10 years ago, but the person who's appointed as the fifth member, they do charge for their services. Judge Brathwaite charged for his services. He was paid by the county. The engineering firm that produced the maps, that was also, I believe, paid for by the county. And the court reporting firm that was used at the time submitted a bill, and the county paid for that as well. So I'm sure we can accommodate things. I would ask perhaps that you and Mr. Suleiman get together on the things that you think you're going to need, so that I can get that list and then discuss it with the people here in administration.
Somebody's got to mute their mic there. I'm fine with that, Mr. Ferguson, or perhaps maybe you, me, and Mr. Davis jump on a three-way call maybe early next week.
That's fine. That's fine.
We'll be together Tuesday. Maybe we'll reach out then.
Whatever. That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. That'll work.
Jim will buy us both lunch, Keith. So there you go.
Well, maybe.
Amen, brother. Amen.
The county expense.
I would say, before we open up to public comment, Mr. Davis, Ms. Witherspoon, Mr. Rajput, any other comments?
Riaz, anything to add?
No, I don't.
I don't have any comments. I'm pretty satisfied for what we have agreed upon for right now.
Thank you. I have nothing further. Let's open up to the public again, one last time. Anybody from the public wishing to speak on anything with respect to our process? Raise your hand.
We get asked too, we keep it to 5 minutes or 3 minutes, folks, just, keep it brief. Any other comments or
I don't see
questions?
anybody else.
Let me just look at my list here. All right, so I guess, may I entertain a motion to adjourn, folks?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, nay. Well, folks, I really appreciate you tuning in. Keith and Mr. Rajput, look forward to working with you. Thelma, thank you as always, and we'll talk next week.
Great. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Chairman.
Thank you all.
Be well.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. Take care now.
Have a good evening.